Hello, I'm Keith Foster, and this is News Voice. News Voice, the app which makes the news more open, more democratic, more transparent, and helps you break free of your little filter bubble. In a moment, we're going to be talking to Dr. Richard Freed, a psychologist in the US, who believes there's a new kind of addict on the scene. Teenagers who are not addicted to drugs, but instead addicted to their screens, to their social media, to their smartphones, and to their video games. And he believes his own profession, psychology, is taking a very dangerous turn.
We need to address the fact that psychology is being used as a weapon against kids, not to heal, but as a weapon. Psychologists have ethics. We're supposed to do no harm.
We'll hear more from Dr. Freed in just a second. Let me just remind you that News Voice is a news app which aims to democratize the news and give you a chance to actually influence it yourself. I'll give you more details on how you can do that after our interview. Let's start with some figures, though. A recent survey showed that 95% of teenagers in the US have access to smartphones. Of those, 44% say they're on their phones constantly. Another 45% said they were on their phones every day. Dr. Richard Freed has a practice in California as a psychologist, and he is meeting a new kind of patient, teenagers who are addicted to the screen. I asked him what sort of patients he's seeing and what sort of symptoms they're showing.
The typical teen is spending 6 hours and 40 minutes on entertainment screens on their phones. But what we don't know, and what really needs to be recognized, is that it's disadvantaged kids who are so much more affected by this. And these are kids that I see in my practice. I get to see kids from more advantaged families as well, whose families can afford to put them in extracurricular activities, who maybe can afford babysitters or a nanny, or they don't have to work as much. But it's lower income kids in lower income families, and Black kids who are so much more affected. These kids spend far more time on smartphones, on these entertainment technologies, which we know pose health risks to them and hurt their academic success. And here we are running around, looking around why Black kids don't do as well in school. And why would that be? But here we're just ignoring what's right in our face, that is dominating those kids' lives much more than white kids, much more than advantaged kids. If you pick up cocaine, if you drink way too much, no matter how well functioning you are, you can develop an addiction to those substances. Same with technology. No matter how well functioning a kid is, if they just start overusing, they're going to develop a problem.
We'll come back to the power of technology in a moment, but I was interested when you talked about parents. Is it true that the problem lies with the youngster, or is it sometimes the fact that the parents have taught them this behavior, that parents themselves, you see them in, people usually say restaurants, if you see a family eating in a restaurant, that the parents will spend as much time checking up on their news feed or whatever as their children do?
We don't want to blame parents because they simply don't know. Parents are, that really, science knows that there are known health risks to putting kids before, like if kids are young and they are growing up with a mobile device, that decreases the chances that kid's going to develop language well. But I don't see that warning on devices that's given to parents. We now have the World Health Organization saying video games are addictive. Where is that label when parents are buying such and such video game player for their kids? How were parents to know? We have Dr. Jean Twenge saying the more girls are on smartphones or social media and other devices, the more likely they are to be depressed and the more likely they are to be suicidal. Where is the industry coming out to help parents understand, to make good decisions about what their kids use?
Okay, to go back to the power of these devices that you mentioned earlier, you're a psychologist. You can see the patterns of the way the games are designed to create addiction. Are companies using psychologists like yourself to create games that they know will have that power to addict?
Psychologists and other what are known as user researchers, some of this is done that user research is done to make a product better for adults, to navigate a website better. So it's not all problematic. But a lot of that user research and a lot of psychologists are used by industry to use their knowledge of human behavior to develop products that really pull kids onto a device or a product, an app, because their revenue model is to pull kids onto the device and to not let them go. So much of that is done, and that's where psychologists come in. And that's why myself and Dr. Megan Owens wrote a letter to the American Psychological Association to say, we need to address this. We need to address the fact that psychology is being used as a weapon against kids, not to heal, but as a weapon. And that letter was signed by many eminent psychologists. And so we're hoping we're going to get that the APA is going to take heed and really address the fact that what's happening is psychologists have ethics. We're supposed to do no harm. We're not supposed to secretly manipulate especially vulnerable populations like kids without consent. That is exactly what's happening with psychologists in the industry now.
That's scary. As you say, it's weaponizing this phone that people are carrying with the use of psychology.
It is. And really who really woke us up a lot to this are leading tech execs like Tristan Harris, who formerly at Google, Sean Parker, Facebook president. Tristan is with the Center for Humane Technology. Really, these leading tech execs really came forward before psychologists to say these products are exploiting the psychological vulnerabilities of users, especially kids, and it's something that should be addressed. So it's really interesting that tech execs are stepping up to address this, but psychologists have not, and the profession of psychology have not.
What would you say to people who say that teenagers have always found something to ruin their lives with, or to obsess them, whether it's been rock music or video games back in the old days in the shopping mall, or movies, or just writing depressing poetry? That teenagers of a certain nature will always find something to be obsessed about, and that just this idea of phones and games is just the latest in a long line of distractions.
Years ago, kids probably did watch too much TV, and there were a lot of good researchers who said, wow, if kids watch a lot of TV, they're going to not read as well, and they're not going to do as well in school. They were all correct. Kids that spend a lot of time doing that are more likely to struggle in school and not be successful and not read. But with each new technology, it displaces, let's say, TV a little bit, but it more likely it has this additive effect, such that the time that kids spend with entertainment screens has dramatically increased from the mid-90s to today, such that it's ever more displacing what the developmental lives that kids need. We can't get around the fact that kids need to engage with family. We can't get around the fact that kids, even teens, need to have a powerful connection with their family. They also need to be focusing on school. We seem to forget this. And I think parents now know this, and research will tell us, but it's just telling us that something's different today.
Right. And what is very different now with the phones, of course, is that in the cities, on the sidewalks, you'll see people walking around like this, with their head down, looking into a screen. I don't know how people avoid crashing into each other all the time. It's as if there's a society of zombies that's being created here.
These are powerful devices with powerful technologies. Tristan Harris was really great in describing really what a smartphone is. It's really a slot machine in your pocket. The whole, essentially sort of you pulling a slot machine lever, or you're scrolling to refresh, like what's coming next. Am I going to get this prize, or am I going to just happen to see a post that someone liked my photo, or I'm maybe if I'm gaming on my phone, am I going to come across that loot box? We as humans are really set up to be triggered by what's called random or variable reward ratios. That's why slot machines make they made Vegas, and they continue to be the number one moneymaker in Vegas or any kind of gambling facility. They build all those big fancy hotels, and that random reward is and our phones is really also what's driving kids and adults not being able to look up from their devices.
I know you said you were a bit hopeful earlier on, but if I were to ask you to give me your deep-seated belief in the future, which way do you think this is going to go?
You caught me on the right side of bed today, glass half full. So I honestly think this is going to get better. When I go talk at schools and conferences, and just when I read a paper, things are changing. There is an insight right now that is happening that was not present even a year ago, or 2 years ago. You see parents, you see schools ready to take action in a way that they weren't. We really also want to look to people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and Melinda Gates. These leading tech execs are the ones who kind of get it. Nick Bilton, a tech writer, called up Steve Jobs and says, how are your kids liking the new iPad? And he said, my kids aren't on that. We limit how much technology is used at our home. And Bill and Melinda Gates didn't get their kids smartphones until they were 14. And Melinda said subsequently, I think even that was too soon. So all these leading tech execs are pushing back the age when kids get the devices. They're the ones that are getting it. They're the ones who are protecting their kids. And what I really want to see is industry reaching out, and not just with these leading tech execs, but helping everyday parents like myself to understand that this would be a better way to raise kids, like leading tech execs are raising their own.
Dr. Richard Fried, maintaining his hope there. If you want to find out more about that issue, you can pick up Dr. Fried's book, which is called Wired Child. Or you can go to his website, which is richardfried.com. And his last name is spelled F-R-E-E-D. Okay, thanks for watching the interview. News Voice, as I mentioned before, is an app which seeks to democratize the news, to make it more open and more transparent, and to give you a chance to take part in that. Once you become a News Voice user, you can suggest news stories that should be put up onto the app, and you can do that as long as you have a couple of sources for that news story. You can also upvote stories which you think are worthy of being upvoted and being looked at by more people. And you can even write summaries to kick off those stories. So go to your app store and collect and download News Voice, and let's try and fix the news together. I'm Keith Foster. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye.